All right, I am Brett Scott. This is Tom Downey. Follow him on Twitter at WhatGoingDowney. Tom, we've got the 25 free agent targets on defense this week.
Yes, offense last week.
25 guys that the Cowboys could be looking at in free agency this offseason. And I want to start with Ezekiel Ansah.
Yeah, I like this guy. This is only an option if the Cowboys let DeMarcus Lawrence leave, which really wouldn't make any sense. Ansah had a really weird year. He had 12 sacks. You think, oh, really good production from him. 6 of them came in the last 2 games.
Yeah.
And he also had a game with 3 sacks as well. So most of his production came in like 3 games, and he only kind of showed up at the end of the year, but he's got the name recognition. He's had some injuries. So I think Ansah, in what is kind of a down pass rushing class in terms of the free agency, he's going to get paid a little bit. It's also why the Cowboys cannot let DeMarcus Lawrence leave, because someone's going to throw a bunch of money at him. That's why you franchise tag him at the very least.
You start us on the defensive line, Tom. Let's go to Star Lotulelei, the Panthers DT.
Star did not play as well as he's had in the past. He had a bit of a down year. He is more of a run stuffer. That's going to be the theme here for the most part on the defensive line. With David Irving and Malik Collins, you don't really need to spend big money on a 3 technique, although there are some guys that make some sense there. But I think 1 technique is where the Cowboys are going to focus their attention this offseason. I think Star makes some sense there. I don't really know what his price tag is going to be. He could try and take a 1-year deal and rehab his stock, and if that's the case, he does make some sense for the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, here's a guy that's been linked to the Cowboys in trade talks a few years ago when he was with the Jets. How about Sheldon Richardson?
Well, we know the Cowboys like him. Remember back in 2016, they almost traded for him, and then Stephen Jones says, you know, we can't overpay for something even though you might want him. They didn't think the value was right for Richardson. They had some talks this year as well when the Jets flipped him to the Seahawks for a 2nd-round pick and wide receiver Jermaine Kearse. Again, a little too pricey for me for a guy who might end up being just a 1-year rental. I like Richardson a lot. I think he'd be a great fit as a 3 technique, which he didn't always play at times for Seattle and the Jets, but he brings a little bit more pass rushing value, even though the stats don't always show it to you. The edge guys for Seattle got a little bit more of the sacks than Richardson did, but he's a very talented player. He'd be a good fit on the Cowboys defense, would fit in that Deacon defense when they go to that 3-down lineman look and have 2 linebackers, and it's almost their dime package with 3 down linemen over the nose guard. But I think he might be too expensive.
All right, here's another guy that'd probably be too expensive. Falcons, Dontari Poe. Of course, the Falcons signed him away from the Chiefs last season. Free agent yet again.
You know, Poe is exactly what the Cowboys need right now as a run-clogging nose guard. He didn't grade that well on Pro Football Focus, graded a little bit better on Bleacher Report. Didn't quite impact the game that you would have liked to have seen him have with the Chiefs. Had maybe a bit of a down year.
Yeah.
But we know who Dontari Poe is. He's going to stop the run, and he's going to do a good job at it. So I am fine with bringing on Poe. I think he wants a big, fat, long-term contract. I don't want Dallas to do that at defensive tackle and free agency. But if he wants to sign another 1-year, $6, $7, $8, $9 million deal, I think it might be worth doing, knowing that that's kind of going to be your only big free agent acquisition.
So, I mean, Tom, we talk about these guys, but you're a big proponent of Vita Vea,
the
Washington defensive tackle.
So
if the Cowboys were able to draft him, which of course timing-wise, you know, you'd have to do one before the other.
Yeah.
Are these guys then off the table?
Yeah, and I think if the Cowboys are committed to going DT early, which I don't think they're going to pigeonhole themselves into doing quite yet, that's when it becomes Poe's off the table, Logan's off the table, some of these other guys are off the board. But you could see the Cowboys add one of these guys and still draft somebody later on in the draft and not spend a high priority pick on a nose guard. Now, I am very curious to see what Dallas does with nose guard, because Rod Marinelli doesn't value nose guards that highly. But he's not going to be here forever. So if you see the Cowboys add a big-name nose guard to spend a high pick, that means Marinelli didn't get his way, and the Cowboys are looking beyond him going forward.
All right, you just briefly mentioned this guy, Bennie Logan. That's all right. Bennie Logan, the Chief.
You know, he came over from the Eagles, and I was kind of surprised he got a very similar contract to Dontari Poe, because I'm like, ooh, well, Poe is better than Logan. Logan was okay this year. He is not going to be a guy that gets sacks for you. That's not who he is. He had 1.5, but he is a run stuffer through and through. He would kind of, I think, be more of a 2-down lineman for the Dallas Cowboys. I wouldn't mind adding him, but I think the price might be a little high for a guy that, as far as I'm concerned, is only going to bring you plays on 1st and 2nd down.
All right, one more here on the defensive line, and that's the Raiders' man, Justin Ellis.
All depends on who you evaluate. PFF had him as the 45th defensive lineman. Bleacher Report in their NFL 1000 series gave him 99.
Where does Tom Downey have him? That's what I care about.
Tom Downey kind of has a little bit closer to 45. I'd say he's kind of more in that 50-60 range. Justin Ellis is not going to be a pass rusher, but I like him more than maybe Logan and Poe because he's going to be cheaper. If you're the Cowboys, I don't think you want to spend $10 million on a nose guard. I would rather draft one or get someone a little bit cheaper like Justin Ellis, knowing that the production's not going to be the same, but you can bring him on for a 1 or 2 year deal, draft somebody, try and develop them, and then let Ellis leave. So if the Cowboys are trying to go cheap at nose guard, I think somebody like Ellis makes some sense.
All right, we're going through 25 players on the defensive side of the ball that the Cowboys could look at this offseason in free agency. Let's move to the linebacker spot. And how about NaVorro Bowman? He goes over to the Raiders and just was a monster for them late in the season.
I mean, he'd be great. Like, I would love to bring in Bowman. There are some injury concerns in his past, but we know how talented Bowman is. He racked up all the tackles for Oakland because they had no other linebacker help. Dallas tried to sign him. They wanted to bring him in because Hitchens was hurt, Sean Lee was banged up, Jalen Smith was not 100% and still is not 100%. But in the end, Brett, as much as I would love to get Bowman, I think he's going to be too pricey. I have concerns that Anthony Hitchens will price himself out of the Dallas Cowboys range. NaVorro Bowman will be out of the Cowboys range. So he would be awesome to get, but I don't know if the money makes sense.
All right, let's go to another guy. How about a former Redskin, Zach Brown?
Brown is a fascinating player because he hasn't gotten the big contract he wanted. He's had 2 straight years of having a bunch of tackles and racking them up, but he hasn't got that long-term.
Kind of under the radar nationally,
yeah,
too.
he is. And look, he's a very talented linebacker, but and you know that the tackles are there. He's a really good linebacker, but he wants that big long-term deal, and no one's given it to him yet. And the Redskins might not because they gave one to Mason Foster. So Brown is back where he is again, trying to get big money, and might end up getting kind of the short end of the stick. But with Brown, I think Dallas would like him, especially what his contract was this year, which is like $3 million.
Yeah.
But Brown is going to look at Dallas and go, you got Smith and Lee, why would I take part-time role when I can get starting role somewhere else? And that's kind of why I don't think it makes too much sense.
Where have we heard this narrative about long-term contracts and Redskins?
All over the place.
Exactly. And, well, they made a move this week to get Alex Smith. So
which, by the way,
that gets rid of the Kirk Cousins thing.
It helps the Cowboys, by the way.
Yeah. We'll take Alex Smith. Cowboys manhandled the Chiefs and Alex Smith
and they
this
got
year.
rid of Kendall Fuller.
Yeah.
Oh, Redskins.
All right, let's go to another linebacker, Paul Posluszny.
Hey, he played with Sean Lee,
yeah.
And he's kind of...
Well, Penn State linebacker you, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is still linebacker, though it's kind of maybe not quite the same anymore. I haven't quite turned out those guys like they used to do. Posluszny, I don't know if he's going to be back with the Jaguars because he kind of became the third linebacker because Telvin Smith was really good, and I also love Miles Jack as well. So maybe he'd be willing to go be kind of the third linebacker with Dallas and reunite with Sean Lee, a veteran option. He still plays at a high level. I would feel so much better if Sean Lee gets hurt to say, okay, it's okay. We got Posluszny. If Jalen Smith gets hurt, okay, we got Posluszny. I would love to have him as depth as that number 3 linebacker, but he might be a little bit too expensive for me, and that's the main concern here with me with Posluszny. I would love to get him, but money is going to be a factor. Yep. Again, folks, Cowboys got about $12 million to spend on the defensive side of the ball, not including Anthony Hitchens.
Right. But including DeMarcus Lawrence.
Yes, that factors in DeMarcus Lawrence because they're not going to let him leave.
All right, here's another Chief on the list here, Kevin Pierre-Louis.
He would have been higher until about a week ago he got arrested for marijuana possession. So
right at the Cowboys alley.
Yeah, which maybe you don't bring in another guy with drug issues.
No, let's not do that. Come on, guys.
I like him as a special teams guy and as a backup. I think he'd fit that role pretty well, but with the marijuana possession for let's call him an average NFL backup, I don't know why you would want to bring that in. It's just, let's just try and stay a little bit cleaner because they've had that issue off-field stuff.
All right, let's go to Marquis Flowers.
Traded from the Bengals to the Patriots before the season started and had his best NFL year because the Patriots were decimated at linebacker. Flowers is still better as a backup, but he brings good special teams value. He's the guy that Bill Belichick loves because of that special teams ability. But in the end, I think he kind of stays with New England. I wouldn't mind bringing him on, but I still would rather, he's more of a special teams kind of a 4th linebacker. And I think if you're the Cowboys, you're trying to find a 3rd guy because you don't fully trust the 1st and 2nd guys because of past injuries.
That's putting it lightly, right, Tom?
That's a fair way of putting it.
That's very fair.
Thank you.
All right, a couple more linebackers here for you guys. Kevin Minter is next up on the list.
Another former Bengal, and he didn't have the best year. He was limited because of injuries, didn't sign for that much. He would be, I think, a realistic option coming off the down year, signs a 1-year prove-it contract, plays as that 3rd linebacker, and gives the Cowboys the depth that they really, really need right now. Because without the depth, I have major concerns about linebacker because I don't want to play Damian Wilson or Kyle Wilber or Justin Durant more money. Let's go out and get somebody, and so we don't have to re-sign Justin Durant off the street again like we've done for 2 straight years.
Injuries, always a concern, though, of course. Keenan Robinson, another one that was limited this year because of injuries.
A common theme, I don't think the Cowboys, if they let Anthony Hitchens walk, are going to spend big money at linebacker unless they really don't trust Jalen Smith, which I think that they do trust him. So Keenan Robinson is a guy that I've liked for a while. He's not a starting caliber linebacker. That's simply not who he is. But as a cheap veteran backup, I like his fit. He's a guy that if we have to play him in a pinch, I'm not going to feel that concerned about. He's no Sean Lee. He's no Jalen Smith. But I think he has the ability there to step up if needed and be a quality option for the Cowboys as a veteran backup depth.
Those were your linebackers and 25 guys that the Cowboys could go after in free agency. One quick comment question here from Timothy. Do the boys still have Rolando McClain under contract, Tom?
So technically, yes, but he's on the suspended list, so they're not paying him. So it's kind of like an Alden Smith situation, like his contract just kind of toils and rolls over. And at this point, I don't think McClain's ever going to come back. So it's whatever. Like,
yeah, so
it is and it isn't.
Technically, yes, Timothy, but don't expect him.
Technically, yes, but it doesn't matter at all because it's just he's not going to come back. They're not paying him, so it's a wash on that end. Good question though.
Which of course, too bad. Another.
If he had kept his head on straight,
another career that could have been. All right,
Alabama players, don't go back to Tuscaloosa. Bad things happen.
Stay off the weed.
Also, yes.
All right, let's move into the secondary. Let's take a look at the Rams cornerback Trumaine Johnson.
This is a guy that I had my eye on last year because he was coming off a very good year, had the franchise tag, played pretty well under Wade Phillips. He's going to be too expensive. The Cowboys sunk their capital at cornerback into young players like Chidobe Awuzie and Jordan Lewis. If this had been a year earlier, I think Johnson might have made some sense. But they've got the young players. They could move Byron Jones to corner, which we'll discuss more about later because I'm going to go on my secondary rant again, Brett, here. Because we're in the secondary. But later on, we're going to save it for the end because I already got my guy in free agency. We'll get to him. But Johnson, I think it's a year too late. He's just going to be too expensive for the Cowboys, and they don't want to invest big money at corner.
Yeah, and I think the Cowboys have, they have made their decision in the secondary. They're going back to the youth and those draft picks from last year. And I think you saw those guys really improve as the season went on.
I liked what I saw.
They got over their injuries.
I liked what I saw.
And finally just got the reps that they needed to improve as first-year NFL players. All right, let's take a look at another cornerback here, Patrick Robinson, who is still playing, Tom.
Yeah, he's still playing. He's playing with the Eagles, which we don't like because we might have to change our graphic with 0 stars equaling Eagles Super Bowl rings. It's fake news. With Robinson, his path has connected with the Cowboys. Remember, in 2016, he nearly signed a deal. And there was actually an agreement in place, and then Robinson switched agents, and it all changed, and he ended up going with the Colts, had a bad year, went to the Eagles, and has thrived this year under Jim Schwartz as a nickel corner. He's been really a top 10 cornerback this year, but my issues with Brett, A, he's probably going to be a little pricey, and B, I don't want another nickel corner. The Cowboys have too many of them. They've played Xavier Woods there. Chidobe Awuzie can play the nickel. I still think Jordan Lewis is best there, even though he can play outside. Skandrick is best as a nickel. Anthony Brown, I think, has to play nickel. So I like the talent, but I don't want another nickel corner. The Cowboys have got to look outside if they're going to go for a cornerback.
Let's go over to Prince Amukamara, former Giant.
Great name.
Of course, great name. He's on the all-name team, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll just say yes.
Starting corner right there.
That's right.
With Amukamara, he has had an interesting career because he has been searching for that big money deal, and no one's given it to him because there are some inconsistency issues and there are injury issues. He's almost always hurt, so he signed a bunch of one-year prove-it deals. Hasn't really proved it. If he comes in at like 1 year $4 million, 1 year $5 million at most, I wouldn't mind it because he has that size to play outside. But I think the Cowboys will look elsewhere with Amukamara. I think he's going to try and get more guaranteed playing time elsewhere.
All right, let's keep going on our list of 25 free agents here. We're in the secondary. Let's take a look at Kyle Fuller.
I like Kyle Fuller's talent. Now, there was the injury in 2016 with the knee. Had a huge bounce-back year, by the way. 22 pass breakups, 2 INTs. He's now in line for a big, fat payday. If the Cowboys are going to throw money at a corner, this is probably who I go try and get. But with that said, Brett, there was some rumblings during the 2016 season that Fuller wasn't as hurt as he actually was and that he could have found a way to play through it, or that he had kind of quit on the team and just wasn't all that committed. He came back this year and revitalized his career, but I think that's going to be in the back of minds of NFL teams like, hey, what was going on in 2016? Like, there was some reports from Chicago, from leaks from the Bears that said, hey, Fuller's okay. Like, we're not fully sure that he's just not, half-assing it right now.
So it seems like somebody that the Patriots will pick up and win a lot of games with, like Martellus Bennett.
Yep.
Shoulder injury.
Exactly right.
All right, let's take a look at Bashaud Breeland.
With the Kendall Fuller trade, I think it's less likely that the Redskins let him leave. And I've seen Breeland mentioned in some other articles from other sites about he could be a fit for the Cowboys. He's inconsistent. He has a great year, and then he struggles. And then he's good, and then he struggles. So with Breeland, I don't fully trust his consistency. That's kind of been a thing dating to his college days. I think the Redskins can't afford to let him leave because they've got Josh Norman, and then they let Kendall Fuller go for reasons I don't understand. I think they'll retain Breeland, and I think either way it'd be a little bit too pricey for the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, Tom, let's start a chant. We want Mo. We want Mo. Okay, maybe not, but could the Cowboys bring back Morris Claiborne?
I wouldn't mind it. Like, I still like Claiborne, and we saw it in his last year with the Dallas Cowboys. He stayed healthy, and he was actually pretty good. And that was kind of the case again this year, depending on which grading service you like. Did not grade well in PFF. Bleacher Report liked what they saw. I lead more toward Bleacher Report. I still think he is a low-end number one if we're counting 32 guys as number one. So I think he's a top 30 corner in the NFL. And I'd like to put him on the outside again. If he stays healthy, I think he'd be a good fit with Chris Richard. But I think he doesn't want to go back to Dallas. I think he knows that, Dallas was great. We had some fun times. I couldn't stay healthy. I think he's going to go try and look elsewhere. So it'd be fun, but I don't think you'll see the Cowboys address cornerback in free agency. I think in the draft, you could see them spend another mid to late round pick.
A lot of inconsistencies amongst these other ranking services. Stay tuned for the Tom Downey ranking service soon to come on Morris Claiborne. All right, how about TJ Ward?
Ward had an interesting year. TJ Ward is not the same name brand TJ Ward we're used to seeing. Right. He is a strong safety. He didn't play that much with the Bucs, and frankly, when he did play, he wasn't all that great. I think Ward, unfortunately, is firmly on the decline. If he wants to come super cheap, sure. But I think he's going to try and get more money elsewhere, and I think in the end it's going to be, maybe there are some discussions, but both sides say, you know what, let's go different ways because Ward wants to start.
All right, a few more secondary members here to get to before we get to Tom's pick du jour, if you will, in free agency on the defensive side of the ball. It's the soup of the day. Tre Boston.
We didn't order soup. Anyway.
See a movie once in your life.
Tre Boston was kind of a tale of two halves this year. His first half of the year was not that great, but he really picked it up at the end of the year. And, ooh, look, Brett, ready? Drink. Ball skills. 5 picks, 8 interceptions. He can play free safety. If the Cowboys aren't fully sold on Byron Jones, which we'll get to here in just a little bit, Boston could make some sense, but I think he's going to get more money elsewhere. And we've seen this time and time again with the Cowboys, Brett. They don't invest that much at safety. That's the area that they try to go a little bit cheaper at.
All right, let's hit Lamarcus Joyner next on our list.
I would love to get him, but he's going to be a little bit expensive because Lamarcus Joyner thrived this year with the Rams. Wade Phillips did not limit him to just being a nickel corner. They played him at strong safety, free safety, dime linebacker, nickel corner, and he was great in the role. So I would expect Joyner gets re-signed. But if he hits the open market and you're the Dallas Cowboys, like, hey, we got $12 million, let's throw it all at a really, really good safety, I'm down with it. In the end, I don't think the Cowboys do that, though.
Former Cowboys coach
I would love to get him.
Former Cowboys coach Wade Phillips did such a good job with that Rams defense this year.
Did.
All right, next up on the list is Nate Allen.
This I could actually see happening because the Cowboys, as we saw with guys like Robert Blanton, don't mind going into the cheap guys. They like to bring in these guys that compete for camp bodies. And I don't think Nate Allen, at this point in his NFL career, is guaranteed a roster spot when he signs with somebody. He's older, he has some injury issues, but he'd be a decent camp body in terms of veteran depth. And if maybe you have Jeff Heath go down, the Cowboys for the most part at safety were pretty healthy, but if they have injury issues, I don't know if I trust that depth because Kevin Frazier is a good strong safety. Yeah. Byron Jones, we'll talk about here in just a second. Jeff Heath, we know my thoughts on Jeff Heath at this point, Brett. And then I do like Xavier Rhodes, but he's played nickel corner as well. So you do maybe want some more depth here.
All right, 2 more picks in the secondary here. We're going to go to Eric Reid next.
If the Cowboys want to spend money, I am good with them spending it on Eric Reid. Eric Reid had a really good year for the San Francisco 49ers and did a little bit of everything. He was in the box. He was the deep safety. He was the strong safety. And the Cowboys this year showed they like moving their safeties around. And I think Reid is the guy that can help cover tight ends if you want to move Byron Jones to corner, which now I'll use it as my jumping off point. You got to move Byron Jones to corner. Like, please, please do it. He was drafted out of UConn as a corner free safety hybrid. His weakness is in the run game. Why are you making him into a box safety? It just doesn't make sense. And Richard, coming over for Seattle, loves long, lanky, fast corners.
Byron Jones.
That's who Byron Jones is. I think Byron Jones would thrive under Richard as a cornerback. Do that. Anthony Brown becomes your fourth corner. Lewis becomes your nickel guy. Awuzie is your other outside corner. And that is a young, really good cornerback group. And then you have Xavier Woods, I think, as the free safety, which you drafted him to be, not a nickel corner where the Cowboys played him a lot this year. Xavier Woods as your free safety, and then Jeff Heath as your strong safety, and or somebody else on this list, Brett.
Let's get to Tom's pick in the Cowboys free agency. The last guy on our 25, Kenny Vaccaro.
Make it happen. Remember, folks, the Cowboys almost traded for Vaccaro during the NFL draft. There was a very nearly agreed to trade of Kenny Vaccaro going in exchange for Orlando Scandrick. And if this had happened, I would have absolutely loved it because I am a big fan of Kenny Vaccaro. Now, he didn't have the same year he's had in the past because the Saints did not use him right. They lined him up as a nickel corner a lot. You want to make him into a strong safety. He is really, really good against the run. You bring him in, he is your best safety against the run. He's almost the antithesis of Byron Jones. He can stop the run. He can hold up in coverage as well. I want the Dallas Cowboys to go sign Kenny Vaccaro. He's not going to be that expensive. Make him into your strong safety, and then in a year, you can go sign Earl Thomas, and boom, Cowboys secondary solved. Byron Jones, Awuzie, Lewis, Xavier Woods as your third safety. You have Kenny Vaccaro and Earl Thomas, best secondary in the NFL. You can cut Jeff Heath. Boom, we did it. Hire me, Cowboys. We're done.